Hi everyone, my name's Chris Tate. I'm one of the Education and Training Coordinators here at Yachting Australia. What we'll be looking at today is the Instructor report form. So this is the instructor assessment that takes place either at a course or a variation of this form will actually be created that you guys can use for revalidating instructors. Don't think of this as a simple yes, tick yes, tick yes, tick yes type of form. Okay, that actually doesn't tell us much about that instructor. What we want to get into the habit of doing is not only ticking yes or no as to whether that competency was achieved, but also providing a little bit of evidence as to why you thought the instructor either did or did not meet that criteria. Okay, it doesn't need to be an essay. It can just be one sentence as to why you thought that person did achieve it or did not achieve that competency identified. Now, two things to think of these assessments as is one, a useful tool in terms of you're going to assess, many instructors across your time as a senior instructor. If all of a sudden you're asked by the state association or a specific club or centre asking, do you know a good instructor for powerboat, keelboat, dinghy, whatever, you may know one off the top of your head, which is great, but if you're asked about a specific person that they have in mind and you don't recognise them, you'll hopefully be able to pull out their assessment form, and by reading that assessment form, that'll jog your memory as to whether the person was competent or not yet competent firstly, but also the type of instructor they were, and then you can advise the club or centre or state accordingly about this instructor. That's one good thing that these can be used for. The other thing is the whole notion that this is a record, this is evidence as to why that instructor is deemed or was deemed competent or not yet competent. Could be handy if, for instance, they disagree with you by making them not yet competent. They'll walk away from the course and suggest that you actually didn't assess them correctly. Okay, this report form will actually be your evidence to show that actually I did assess them correctly. We had a discussion about this and they actually signed off on the form, so that protects you in one way. The other good thing is if something does happen down the track, the instructor's negligent in some way, there'll be some sort of inquiry, why was this person allowed to instruct? Once again, this is your evidence to say this person on this day met every competency, and as a result we gave them the qualification. If down the track then they do something negligent, okay, that doesn't fall on you, that falls on them. Okay, it's not scare tactics, this is just how it is, and this is just some benefits of using this form correctly, which I'll explain now. So firstly we're going to look at an assessment that's been done on a candidate who has been deemed competent. You need to ensure that you put all the person's details at the top of the page, including their YA number, just because there are 100 Bob Smiths in our system, so we need to make sure we're talking about the right person. It's also important to put the name of the course, and then tick the actual qualification that you're recommending this person for. This section is all about proving how the person has or has not met the criteria. So for each of the criteria, you need to put at least one little comment in each of the boxes, indicating how they have or have not met that criteria. As you can see, this person's quite a good instructor and they've done well on their assessment, and as a result there's a lot of ticks in the yes column and a lot of positive comments. 2.5, use questioning effectively. This person obviously failed to ask open-ended questions, so that's the feedback that the senior instructors provided. Now, because you've got all those little sentences and jotted down notes in the above section, this final box just basically is a summary of all that's been discussed with the person about their theoretical assessment here, and indicating in 4.0 whether they've actually demonstrated the sufficient knowledge and understanding of that topic. Next up, we've got the practical assessment. Exactly the same as the theoretical or theory assessment, in that you need to list a comment for each of the criteria indicating how they have or have not met that criteria. Again, this person's quite good. They've ticked all the yes columns as well as given quite a lot of positive feedback in each of the boxes. 6.7, they've obviously communicated in a clear and effective manner because they've ticked the yes column, but they've also put the no column just because they've failed to stop at one stage and ensure the group is listening. Okay, again, they've put all the positive comments here, a bit of a summary as to what was discussed in the above criteria, but also listed an area where they can improve, which is important. Even if they're a competent instructor, it's always good to provide them some sort of feedback as to how they can improve. Okay, this person does not need an action plan because they're deemed competent. And then it's important to get their signature. Okay, you're signing off saying that all of this criteria has been met, and then they're signing, acknowledging that you've actually gone through that with them. Okay, next up we've got an instructor that's deemed not yet competent. These are often the more challenging ones for senior instructors to deal with. Again, you'll need to put the candidates' names and details within the form and indicate which qualification you're, in this case, not recommending them for. Okay, exactly the same as the other assessment, in that you're providing now comments indicating how this person has not met some of these criteria, and of course the ones that they actually did meet. Once again, it doesn't have to be an essay, but it just needs to be a jotted down point indicating yes they have or no they haven't, and this is why. Exactly the same in that you're going to use the above comments to write a summary of the overall feedback for the session. The practical assessment, is exactly the same, providing each of those comments indicating why they have not failed or why they have failed to meet the criteria, or in some cases where they've actually met it. Important thing to flag here is on the left hand side there, those numbers that are highlighted, and basically any number with an asterisk, they're seen as quite critical components of the session. Generally they're around the safety of the session or the skill, the teaching of the skills. So if they've failed to teach a skill correctly or the session is unsafe, they're deal breakers in terms of this assessment, and you'll need to ensure that if you've ticked no for those, there's a fair chance that this person's going to be deemed not yet competent, and there's some sort of action plan to follow. As you can see, mixed feedback, some they have met the criteria, some they have not, and as always providing each of, the evidence for each of those criteria as to how they have or have not met that. 7.1 is interesting. Okay, so they've failed to summarise because they've run out of time. But then I've indicated there Q for question and C action plan. So I'll refer to that in a moment. Again, using the above points, you'll put some overall feedback for the session, indicating it's important here to indicate a positive, using the old sandwich approach, whereby you start with a bit of positive feedback and then go into the areas that they need to improve. So that's important as well. And then when they're deemed not yet competent, this is where the action plan comes into play. For some things, it will just be about practicing, rehearsing, giving them feedback as to they need to do this before the next assessment. There are some other actions that you can put in these action plans that can help this person get over the line when it comes time to doing their next assessment. So 4.0 there is go and observe Fred Lee from Happy Sailing Club deliver their session on winds, tides and currents. Watch how he delivers simple messages. Okay, so this is almost when the whole mentoring thing comes into play. And if you've got connections where you can, connect this new instructor or potential new instructor to an experienced instructor to enable them to learn from how they deliver certain things, it can only be a positive for this potential new instructor. 6.0, this is more a question for them. Are you interested in being teamed up with Sally Jones from ABC Training Centre? Okay, if so, go and complete a few sessions with her and gain feedback. Sally will then provide me with the feedback as to how you're going. Again, this mentoring type relationship that will only develop this instructor and develop their skills before actually giving them the full qualification to instruct by themselves. 7.1, just the question. how would you summarise your next session? So this indicated in the previous page that they ran out of time, so they didn't do a summary. But this is where you can actually question them and say, okay, you ran out of time, but how would you actually summarise your session or bring it to an end? And if they talk through it, give you an adequate answer, and you're happy with that, you can actually then go back and tick the box indicating yes, they have met the criteria as opposed to no. Looking back there, 8.0, so attend, the final action, and might be used in this case, is get the person to attend next month's instructor course to redo their assessment. You might want them to redo the entire course. It's up to you basically. If they've only just missed out, you might want them just to come to the assessment component, and having done some sort of mentoring in the process, hopefully they would have developed their skills, so they're a bit more organised and a bit more confident next time, and that way they can come do their assessment and hopefully get them over the line. Again, it's important to get their signature, just indicating that you've gone through this feedback with them, and both yourself and them need to sign in the box. In this case, because they're not yet competent, you wouldn't tick where it's got office use only, you wouldn't tick those bottom 2 marks because they're not complete. They haven't completed the course because they were deemed not yet competent, and as a result the qualification won't be added just yet. Thanks everyone for taking the time to watch that. Hopefully it's given you a better understanding as to how you should be using the report form for the instructors. I do understand that using that on the water does have its barriers, challenges. A way around that will be when we distribute the senior instructor pack. We'll provide you this laminated copy of the criteria, just as a reference for you to ensure that your instructors are getting through all that they need to get through. The more you do it, obviously, the more familiar you'll become with the criteria, and then you won't probably need that sort of resource, but at the start, by all means, hopefully that will assist. Thank you very much for listening once again. If you do have any feedback along the way, especially with how this may impact you running your courses in terms of timing and those sorts of things, please provide that feedback to me here at Yachting Australia, as I'm more than happy to hear about that. Just because if it is across the board, we can look at ways to streamline or advise ways around any issues that you may be having. Thank you. Have fun.